Bonjour, good day. My name's Nick Leiserson. I am the Assistant National Cyber Director for Cyber Policy and Programs in the Office of the National Cyber Director at the White House. And I'm delighted to be here in Montreal today to talk to you a little bit about implementation of our national cybersecurity strategy, and particularly regulatory harmonization, something that we at the White House think is a very important message and initiative that we have ongoing internally within the United States, but that's also very relevant for international audiences. So to start a little bit about the Office of the National Cyber Director, we are new. Our office is about 27 months old. I have a 15-month-old at home, so I'm still counting everything in months. And we were created by Congress as a new office to kind of increase the capacity at the White House to do cybersecurity policy. So to give you an idea, before we got there were about 15 people at the White House doing cybersecurity policy. When the first National Cyber Director started at the White House in July of 2021, he was the only employee in the office. Today we've got about 80 people, and I lead a team that is focused on what we call national cybersecurity, and particularly critical infrastructure, regulation, cyber insurance, incentives, and implementing the national cybersecurity strategy. So the president signed out his national cybersecurity strategy in March of this year, and it really has three fundamental ideas in it. First, we say, look, we're building on years of policy development in the United States and frankly around the world in cybersecurity. So we trace in our strategy all the way back to 1998, the Clinton administration, and draw a through line through the Bush administration, the Obama administration, and even the Trump administration. There are not too many documents that you will find from President Biden that say, hey, we're taking direct inspiration from a Trump-era document, but this is one of them. And really the through line there is collaboration, right? Cyberspace is a collaborative space. It's something where we need to work with our partners in the private sector, and that is fundamentally just as true in this strategy as it was in 1998. That being said, there are two major areas in the strategy that require additional government intervention. The first, we're interested in rebalancing risk. So we look and we say today too much cybersecurity emphasis is placed on end users, and sometimes that's consumers, and sometimes that's actually critical infrastructure owners and operators, whether they be, a K through 12 school district or a water utility. And so one of the shifts that we need to see is to see cybersecurity enablers, to see the people who are best able to operate in cyberspace take more of the responsibility on. The government is part of that. Like, we, the United States government, need to do a better job both combating threats, getting our own house in order. The second major shift we talk about is the need to make investments in long-term cybersecurity, change the incentive structure so that when you're faced with, I'm just going to accrue a little extra technical debt that doesn't look as attractive tomorrow as it does today. And that is a significant challenge, I'm sure. We look at the existing landscape and say, how do we get more security by design? It's not a new challenge, and that's part of the reason that it's highlighted as a strategic shift in the strategy, is because we need to do a better job. And we do this all in service of a vision that the president has laid out, right? And I think that's the other important thing I would say people need to kind of take away from this exercise, is that we regularly say in this community we don't do cybersecurity for cybersecurity's sake, but sometimes people that are actually at the operational level don't believe us, and they say, well, cybersecurity is a cost center. Cybersecurity is a drag on mission. And until we actually get people to understand that, no, cybersecurity enables your mission, we're not going to be able to see the changes that we need to be. And that is the framing that we use right up front in the strategy. But as the acting National Cyber Director likes to say, her favorite page of the strategy is actually the last one. And it's her favorite page because it says, we're really focused on implementation, right? A strategy is only as good as its implementation. And part of the challenge of having a through line from 1998 is that you're like, hey, there's still a lot of good ideas here that we haven't actually implemented. So in July, we published for the first time an implementation plan to go with the strategy, and it lays out 69 specific initiatives that the United States government is taking to make sure that we're actually going to effectuate the president's vision. So what does that look like? For each of these initiatives, they're tied to strategic objectives that we have. They have one agency that we can hold accountable, something that we think is very important, so that you can say, hey, I know exactly whom in the government you should talk to. I was just talking to my colleague Pat, the Canadian government, and we were lamenting the fact that sometimes we can't figure out whom it is that we should be engaging with. And it includes deadlines, like actual honest to goodness, this is when we're going to finish this. Again, both because we believe in transparency, but also because we believe in accountability. The other thing you really need to think about with the implementation plan, though, is we didn't do it for ourselves, right? Past strategies have had implementation plans. They just haven't been released publicly. We released them because we recognize this is a partnership, and if only the government knows what we're doing, but we don't make sure that industry, we don't make sure that our international partners do, then we're leaving a lot of good opportunity to collaborate on the table. So I'd encourage you to take a look at the implementation plan. Maybe you'd be inspired by it with some of the ideas that we have in there. Don't read it cover to cover. It's derived from a spreadsheet. If you look at it, it looks like it was derived from a spreadsheet. It is not meant to be read. Use Control F, use the search functions, but you will find things in there, I think, that will help you understand how the United States government is approaching this topic. And then let me just expound then on one particular initiative, the very first one in the implementation plan that we're very excited about at the White House and is something that I actually spend a great deal of my day-to-day on, and that is the idea of regulatory harmonization. So one of the things we say in the strategy is the way we're going to see the investments, some of the investments that we need to see in long-term resilience and cybersecurity is the federal government, the United States government, needs to be more willing to go to the regulatory toolbox and say there are things that we can be doing that we're not in critical infrastructure sectors to set baseline requirements. In fact, there are several in the United States that have no baseline requirements set whatsoever. But we also say that we're outcome focused here, which means that the regulations need to be smart and thus developed in collaboration with industry, and they also need to be harmonized. When you're talking about common information and communications technology and services that is the same whether you're in a water treatment facility, a nuclear reactor or a nuclear power plant, or a bank, if it is similar enterprise IT and we have a good understanding of how to secure it, we should not have bespoke requirements across these sectors. And at least as important, when we have harmonized requirements, we need to have reciprocal enforcement and compliance mechanisms so that if you are being regulated by multiple regulators, you don't have to show the same thing over and over again in different ways. We really think that this is important because it will help us get to a place where we can raise the bar for cybersecurity while actually lowering compliance costs, right? This is one of the rare cases where it's kind of a win-win. We get better security for less money. The only thing that it requires is the government getting out of its own way, right, and having a coherent approach to cybersecurity requirements. Not actually a small task. And then, of course, what do we do from there is we say, how do we apply this again? Selfishly, internally in the United States, we're looking at how do we work with our state and local partners on this, but also in an international context, because we recognize that many of our peer governments are going through the same types of challenges, right? They too are looking at how are they going to apply regulations to cyberspace and to common ICTS. And again, we're all kind of looking for similar outcomes. There may be some level of risk appetite that differs from national government to national government, but if you're talking about baseline, if you're talking about the things that really are pretty commonly understood as to be unacceptable risks, we're really interested in trying to set those standards and set those compliance mechanisms in a way that will actually transcend national boundaries to the extent that we can. So we have a request for information as the White House has put one out to say, hey, we want to hear from industry, we want to hear from partners, international partners, state and local governments about what's working and what isn't with respect to competing cybersecurity requirements. That actually closes next week. And then we're going to take the information that we've got and try and design a harmonization and reciprocity framework. So again, that's the first initiative of 69 in the implementation plan. This is an annual document. You're going to hear a lot more from the White House and from our partners and agencies over the coming years about how we're updating things. But I thought that would be a very useful, we want feedback. It's something that we welcome from industry and from our partners internationally. And I hope that it kind of gives you a flavor for some of how we're approaching this. I mean, this is a key priority of the administration, and it's a key priority of our office in the Office of the National Cyber Director, and it is key to what our panel is going to talk about next, which is protecting our critical infrastructure. So thank you again for having me. I'll turn it back to the MC and look forward to talking with my colleague from Public Safety Canada. Thank you.